So like kind of building on like what we're talking about, you know, bringing in skating to community or whatever. What do you think the role of an activity like skateboarding, you know, what do you think the role is in promoting community wellness? Like,
Yeah.
what are some of the benefits perhaps that you see?
Yeah, great question. So, Lewis, it's two things. I mean, it's lots of things, honestly, but number one is it's fun. Like, it's
Yeah.
hard. It's hard, but it's fun. Kids need to have fun. They need to be kids. I need to be a kid sometime. Like life is serious. Life is heavy. And we know this like out on the res as well. Like there's so many things that we have to deal with. And so number one is like, we need to create as many opportunities for our kids to just be kids and have fun. So that's a huge part of it. The other part though is like skateboarding is this beautiful thing where how you do it doesn't really matter that much. Like I said before, it's you're not competing, you're not beating someone, you're not, you know, there's no goal. You're not trying to like, oh, I gotta make sure I score 7 points. It's like, no, you literally like you step on your skateboard and you might not know that day where it's, you know, where it's going to take you. Like you might try to learn this thing, or you might try to learn that thing. And so it's empowering. It's like, because what we want to show kids is like, it's okay to just be you. Like, you don't have to be better at this. You don't have to be like, everything is always about getting better and being better. And, you know, like, oh, I gotta be better. And it's like, you don't gotta be better. You just gotta have fun and be a part of it. Of course, we want to like help you if you want to learn. Like, we of course want to help you with that, but that's not the point. And the empowerment that comes from that, from a kid like facing their fears and getting scared and kind of pushing through, especially with mentors who can help them do that. And then also community. Like, we're called Cousins Skateboard Community. This is about community building. We do this together. This is something that it's like, we want kids to know, like, you can be a part of this thing that we do together. Like, you matter. Like, and I think that's really important is community. You know, however you grow up, you feel that, right? So for us, it's like, we want kids to feel like they matter and they belong. We want people to feel like they belong, and they don't have to change to belong, right? And we see that as kids. We see that obviously in you know, the Western world, but we see that in the Indigenous space as well, where it's like, oh, you're from this community. Oh, you're from this res. Okay, well, you're not from this res. Oh, even in the res, you're like, oh, you're that family, or you're from the west side of the res, or you're from the, like, you see that crap. It happens, right? And so for us, we're like, regardless, we want you to know that you can be a part of something and you matter, because that changed our lives, right? And there's no like strings attached. It's not like we're like, okay, you matter, but now you got to do this, or we're not trying to sell you anything. It's just like, this stuff impacted us, and so we want to make sure that we continue that on for you know, the next generation. The other thing is, so I just got a call from I talked to one of my buddies, and he's a professional skateboarder, and he lives in San Diego, and we have a phone call today. And he's like, Stu, I met this native kid in Barcelona. And he was like, I was in Barcelona last week on a skate trip, and we met this native kid from BC, and like, I want to connect you guys. And I'm just like, that's how crazy skateboarding is that I have a friend from San Diego who went to Barcelona, met this native kid from BC, from Vancouver, who also went to Barcelona, because Barcelona and skateboarding, Barcelona is like Hollywood if you're an actor. Like, Barcelona is like the ultimate skate place to go in the entire Barcelona. Any skateboarder will know, like, Barcelona is the place.
What makes it so sweet?
Because the architecture and the culture. So number one, the architecture is like, it's just, I don't know why, but they make, like, if you look at a skate park, a lot of the things the obstacles you see in skateboarding, they're like imitations of things that have been found naturally, right? And so Barcelona just has this like very like wavy, like, there's like these art structures that are it's wavy that you can skate on. They're like natural, like banks and like all of this different stuff. And that skateboarders love that you just don't see in places like Canada that much. And then if you do see them here, you're going to get kicked out in 2 seconds, where in Barcelona, they're just like, hey, have fun. That's
They're
where it's
cool
for.
with it. I mean,
Oh,
that's always
absolutely.
been one of the biggest prohibitive things I find with like
100%.
skating here is like, if you stay in one spot for too long, the security
Mhm.
guards are gonna like come out and harass you or whatever, right?
Absolutely. And what we found is like sometimes that's like that happens on the res too. It's not like, the person working at the Plex is like, oh, cool, skateboarding. They're like, nah, skateboarding is for punks. Get the hell out of here. And so that's also what we're trying to do is like, if we create these spaces for these kids, no one can kick us out.
It's the Keeping It Together podcast. The whole like premise of the show initially, it's gonna change a little bit, but
Yeah.
like initially was like, how do you keep it together over COVID? Now we're like kind of post COVID at this point.
Yeah.
Like, I guess we like want to hear what people's experiences were and like what they learned from that. So I guess like here's like a string of questions that you can kind of like build on. But like, so what was COVID like for the Cousins skateboarding community? Like, did it affect you guys? Did it, did it disrupt, right? How did you guys keep it together, I guess, in that sense?
So I'll say a couple things. I can't speak about COVID without talking about the personal impact it had on me, because that also was what helped us start Cousins. So Cousins didn't exist before COVID. Obviously, we were skateboarders and we were, we loved doing our things, but as an organization, as a nonprofit, COVID really was the catalyst to kind of get our butts off the couch and do something. But for me personally, so when COVID hit, like I was scared, dude. Like I've struggled with mental health my entire life, and I come by it very naturally. And when COVID hit, it scared me, dude. I was, I was in 10 years into a career downtown Calgary, and my wife and I, like our kids, I think were 4 and 2 at the time, and I grew up because I had just so much stuff growing up with just a lot of change. I had a very, like many kids, just a very no consistency in my life growing up. And I was always scared for some reason of getting sick. And so when COVID hit, it was like all of my fears just kind of wrapped up into one. And I'm like, oh my God, it's happening. Like, I can't believe this is actually happening. So my wife and I actually, we lived, we had a big house in Calgary, and when COVID hit, my mom, she has like this little cabin, and not like some big fancy cabin. Like I'm talking like a little cabin. It's called Lac La Nun, and it's this little Métis settlement, just kind of like an hour kind of northwest of Edmonton. And my mom calls me, and I was telling her like, Mom, this is scary. Like, I don't know. And she's like, Stu, just come and live with me. And my whole family, we just packed up and left our big house and went and moved into a tiny cabin with my mom and her husband. And we did it. She was like, just come for a week. And we stayed for 4 months, dude. And, I needed to be with my mom. Like, I needed to feel safe. And luckily, my mom and my wife get along really well. But it also helped us because like now the kids had their grandma to help with, with learning and then we were working virtually. My wife's a teacher, so she was working virtually. And my job was, I was working virtually. So my mom could kind of come in and we could work together. It was amazing. Ended up moving back. Then I got super sick, dude. It's crazy, but I got a brain infection. And
oh no, that's crazy.
it was called cerebellitis. And long story short, you come from a family of doctors, and I just say that because a lot of people, might not know some anatomy stuff, but your cerebellum is essentially what controls your motor skills, and it's where your spinal fluid goes through it. And I got an infection there, and my cerebellum was expanding, and they thought I was having a mental breakdown, dude. I went to doctor after doctor. I spent a week at the Peter Lougheed. I spent a week in the emergency room there, and well, I'd say 5 days. and they thought I was having a mental breakdown. And then finally, after 3 different ambulance rides, I was in 3 hospitals. Someone was like, "Hey, we need to do an MRI." They did an MRI and they found out that, oh my goodness, like you have a brain infection. So I went to rehab, and being off work, it's actually what gave me the like, oh my goodness, life happened and I'm still here. Like I need to focus on what I truly care about.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we're like, you know what, I don't need this job. Like, again, I had a great career, but it was like, it's time for me to go focus on something else. And so that's when we jumped in and started Cousins.
I think that was really powerful, actually. And thank you for sharing that.
I appreciate it. And real stuff happened, dude. Like the other thing, Lewis, like, unfortunately I lost my father during COVID.
No.
Right. And I didn't lose my father because of COVID. I lost my father due to mental health. And I lost my father for it's like the unseen, the tragedy of COVID. It's like my dad struggled with mental health his entire life,
mm-hmm.
and COVID was finally the straw that broke the camel's back, and because of all the stuff that happened through it, right? You can only take so much. And so that happening as well was like, hey, how do I focus on things that matter the most, right? So it was like all that stuff happened to me, and it very much made me kind of just take a look at what else I could do.
Yeah, what matters,
right.
like what's important. I mean, I don't know. I feel like that like brush with mortality almost is like, it forces you to reevaluate yourself and like 100%. The time that you're spending, once you realize that it's limited.
Absolutely. And then you realize that there's things that are worse than death. It's like, for me, it wasn't even that, like, yeah, it was the brush with mortality, totally. But it was also seeing people that were like catatonic, or seeing people that were dealing with brain cancer, and like seeing the whole, like the things that people had to go through, and it was like, oh my goodness, dude, like we need to, like, life is short. It's amazing. And we're so privileged to be able to experience it, even though there's some really crazy and hard things that we go through. But it's a gift. And so how do we get the most out of it?
Mm-hmm.
And then just going back to like Native culture and stuff. So for us, our culture, like, of course, for me, like I kind of say like one shoe, one moccasin, like when people look at me, they're not like, oh, look at that Native dude, I'm a pale looking dude. You know what I mean? Like,
I mean, you look Native to me, man, but like, I don't know. I grew up around, Indigenous people, right? I've got an eye for it. So.
Yeah, you get it, right? You get it. But it's like, but just growing up, like I recognize that. And so, but for me, like I struggle with that identity. I imagine for you, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but like growing up with parents who were successful, and doctors, it's like, that's actually something that you almost feel disconnected from Native culture because of that sometimes, because you're like, it's like sometimes being Native is like, oh, I grew up hard and I grew up like this, And so for me, I've just always felt like identity, like I don't fit in. And so now, like Native culture is such a beautiful thing, and we want to celebrate it. And that's a big thing. I think it's important just to mention, Lewis, is like Cousins. It's also about celebrating and experiencing and loving our Native culture, and not just Blackfoot culture or Cree culture. Or Métis. It's all of it. It's like we don't spend enough time celebrating the beauty of what we have, and it's like being Native is special. A lot of kids grew up with, or being Native was like a bad thing. And that's the connection even with skateboarding. Like we grew up with skateboarders, like skateboarding wasn't a cool thing. Like skateboarding, like I'm 37. Like when kids on my hockey team saw me skateboarding, they called me a goof. You know what I mean? They weren't like, yo, go get it, dude. Like there wasn't Tony Hawk yet. You know what I mean? Like people weren't down. And so like we felt like we were the outsiders, And I think that also resonates with a lot of Native kids. It's like you feel like you're the outsider, right? Mm-hmm. And so now what we do is we're like, no, celebrate that. And there's beauty in that, right? And so, yeah, dude, we just want to celebrate that, and we want to, like, we're not here to fix all problems and like we don't think like, oh, if we get this kid into skateboarding, all of a sudden their family situation is going to get figured out, or like all this is going to happen. It's like, well, no, that's ridiculous. But what we do know is like now they have something. They have something that, and even if they don't skate, they can still come and be a part of this. They can still come and help us with whatever. They can come and hang out. We don't care. Like you matter. You know what I mean? And so it's like, yeah, dude, we just want to keep doing that as much as we can.
Man, that's super cool. And
Yeah.
I want to say thank you for sharing, man. Like,
course,
thank
dude.
you for joining. Thank you for coming and talking about skateboarding and stuff. I hope this inspires some people to, you know, go and just like pick up a deck, and or like, I don't know, honestly, like if you've never skated before, like longboarding is like super, like you don't got to worry about doing tricks or anything. It's like a bit faster and stuff, but I think it's like super good for like people who are just learning. Like I taught my dad, like
Yes.
he longboards and stuff. My entire like, you know, family basically longboards, you know.
No, I couldn't agree with you more on that, Lewis. And like the other thing is we all feel silly. That's kind of why we love skateboarding, and that's why a lot of times we're so involved in powwows and stuff too. It's like a lot of times when people pick up a skateboard, they feel like they don't fit in. They're like, I don't know how to use this, and it's like that's a normal thing. Everyone feels
it's okay to be new at something.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? I feel like I have this conversation a lot with people.
Yes.
You know, it's okay to be bad.
Yeah, it's okay, right? And so I love that. And the other thing we'd say is like, not only that, but we're always looking for people to help. Like we run everything we do is on volunteer base. And so like we're doing programs and communities. We're always looking for people to come help, and you don't have to skate. We're just looking for people who give a crap and who can come and hang out with us for a couple of hours. Even we do stuff like this just to get the word out, because right now, like the other thing is we don't charge. So we don't charge the kids and we don't charge the community. So we don't say like, oh, hey, this program is going to cost you 10 grand. It's like, no, it costs nothing. But of course,
that's probably the great part of skateboarding in general is, you know, it's like you get the board, you just go wherever, you know.
100%. And we bring the boards, we bring all that, but obviously we need the more people who know, the more people who can share our story. You know, who knows who's out there who's like, hey, I'd love to help you guys do that, right? So we're just always looking for people who are down.